I'm very proud to share the pride that you all feel in being recognized by Goldsmiths for what you have achieved, all of you, students and the parents and the family of students, especially perhaps the parents, for all the support and love that you have given and the stresses that you have endured. It makes me very happy to join you and to receive this honor, because there are universities and there is Goldsmiths. And before I say why Goldsmiths is so special and something about your lives after Goldsmiths, I want to just talk briefly about being honored. I don't believe in Britain's historic honors system. Those earldoms go back to success in rape and pillage. The aristocracy was then systematized by empire. They signaled entitlement, preferment, and exclusion. As you just heard, I've dedicated a lot of my life to trying to abolish it. Instead, it was commercialized. Peerages were openly bought and sold. One reason why there are now 780 members of the so-called House of Lords, with a rich range of interests. Even if we can name the exceptions, never have there been so many peers with such little nobility. However, our country is also changing in better ways. Our traditions of deference and exclusion and privilege are altering. My attitude to the honors system hasn't weakened, but the nature of being honored has changed. And I first thought about this when the Open University offered me an honorary doctorate for services to democracy. My mother was one of its first students, having left school at 14. I felt honored to be accepted into its project, which, like Goldsmiths, is one of inclusion, of extending excellence to those like her who had been deprived. I dedicated my degree to her and said never again. But now I'm proud to make an exception, because there are universities and there is Goldsmiths. And a vivid moment brought this home to me last year. I was part of a discussion in Goldsmiths about the future of capitalism. To find the building where it was taking place, I examined the campus map. Usually, great universities are filled with buildings glorifying figures from the old regime. Afterwards, I said to those you were with, you know, I have an odd feeling. 3 buildings here are named after people I knew. The Richard Hoggart building, named after your 5th warden. The Ben Pimlott building, named after your 7th warden. And the Stuart Hall building. I met Richard Hoggart once. He was a working-class writer, famous for his pioneering book, The Uses of Literacy, and he was trying to make the whole world literate by running UNESCO. I was struck by his practical seriousness and his commitment to what the Scottish called the democratic intellect. Ben Pimlott was my age. I greatly miss how we annoyed each other in the way that only people who are on the same side can. We both opposed the invasion of Iraq, but we often disagreed. He approved of Harold Wilson, who I thought was a dreadful prime minister. He wrote respectful biography of the Queen, while I am a Republican. But he was profoundly committed to public service. Today, the culture of public service is traduced by the tabloid press as self-interested paternalism. In fact, we all badly need Ben's selfless commitment, his democratic responsibility. I think of Stuart Hall as a comrade in arms. I should mention, perhaps, that one of the first times I met him was in the Great Hall, the Great Hall of Birmingham University in 1968, when the students were occupying it. We were both there in solidarity with them. He was married to one, I was going out with another, who's here today. I understand how such occupations can be bewildering for parents who see their children mobilize against the institution they have worked so hard to get into. Yet collective action is a learning experience with a difference. It confronts everyone on all sides with crucial issues of agency and responsibility, including how to protest, how to retain support, how to resist sectarianism, and even how to end it. And Stuart himself was profound, but never intimidating. He was the first in this country to identify the explosive dangers of Thatcherism. I like the way he uses concepts to try and make you think through what is happening rather than merely describe them. He coined the term before Thatcher was even Prime Minister. He warned against what he described as her regressive modernization, meaning the way her supporters claim to be traditional while storming our future. I hear Stuart's laugh now as Brexit unfolds. His laughter was like a song. Its Jamaican lilt captured the absurd danger of our vulnerability, but not in a way that was cynical. His unwavering refusal of all forms of dehumanization and racism made him a democratic life force. In Songs of Innocence, William Blake wrote that we might see a world in a grain of sand or a heaven in a wild flower. But can we see democratic intellect, responsibility, or life force in a building? Maybe not just one, but it feels to me walking across the Goldsmiths campus that a democratic argument is taking place between the legacies of these three, fueling an urgent contemporary engagement amongst the women and men who are the students and faculty and support staff of Goldsmiths that makes it such a unique center of higher education, a conversation that is expert and exploratory and is what a university should be for. Stuart Hall, Ben Pimlott, Richard Hoggart, they did not serve vested interests. They engaged in the hard effort of understanding how our society works. That's scholarship. How this needs to be available to all. That's equality. And how it can improve the world. That's being practical. They tested their judgments in publications and broadcasting and policymaking and as educators, so that their buildings are the opposite of ivory towers. They added to the unruliness of the public domain. And they pursued the hardest thing, being truthful. While also, to quote Paul Gilroy, who taught here at Goldsmiths, they knew that the call that matters is what we can do for each other. It's perhaps proof of their dedication to this that none of them were honored by that official honors system. Which brings me to the end of the lessons for your future as graduates. But let's be clear. Can you hear me at the back? Let's be clear. One reason why Richard and Ben and Stuart were not officially honored is that they lost. Their generation, my generation, has delivered a world that is burning, a power system that is reckless, leaders who are racist. One is about to become our Prime Minister. Now, let me be exact, because he doesn't use words scrupulously, so let me put it like this. Like his friend Mr. Trump, who says there isn't a racist bone in my body, he would say that, but he knows that his followers don't believe him, and he's happy with that. So I quite understand if you felt that no one from my generation has the right to offer you advice. Perhaps all I can offer you then is a warning. As you leave Goldsmiths, you each deserve to achieve your potential to the full. And this means striving to make the best of yourself. But do this by cooperating with each other. Don't think you can save the world or yourself by competing with everyone else to maximize your advantage. That's the system of selfishness advocated by President Reagan, Margaret Thatcher, and their present-day successors. It's brought us a ruinous Brexit that will close off our continent to us, a climate emergency, polarization, inequality, and violence. And as we are seeing in America today, the threat, just the beginning, but the threat of a new form of fascism fanned by social media. In these dire times, asking what you can do for others is the best way to reach out for yourself. This is what Martin Luther King was seeking when he called for the world to be governed by a love that does justice. Cooperation is much harder and much more rewarding than competition. It means refusing both to be a victim and to make others your victims. It means sharing your feelings without being ruled by emotion. Having empathy with the feeling of others when you don't share them. It means not closing down your identities, and you have more than one, as we all do, but allowing them to change and to grow. It means using the facility of our digital age to be co-creators of our society, not merely consumers. And it means always using the power of your intelligence, including your emotional intelligence, to make the call that matters, to ask what we can do for others with love and justice.